I worked at a combo gas station convenience store in one of the rougher parts of my city and was just finishing up my shift. Since I worked closing, it was my job to set the alarms and lock up. Normally, there would always be two people working this shift for obvious safety reasons, but this night the other person working with me had gotten sick and expecting no trouble. I sent him home. It was about 10 minutes before the store closed, and I was racing around making sure everything for the night had been accomplished. After going over the final checklist in my head, I only had to wait a few more minutes before I could lock the doors and see out the register. That few minutes never came for me. A man entered and asked me for a pack of cigarettes, and when I turned my back to him to get them, everything went black. Security footage later told the rest of the story. I had been hit in the back of my head by the guy who had a roll of dimes tucked inside his fist. The guy then jumped the counter and kicked me again in the head before opening the register, grabbing the cash and making his escape. The tapes also showed I had laid there unconscious for the next 12 minutes before a random person pulled up to the gas pumps, got out of her car, and walked inside to pay, not realizing we should have already been closed. Seeing me laying there, she first tried to wake me before calling 911. Police arrived next and secured the scene with an ambulance arriving just a minute after. While I was being rushed to the hospital, the police contacted the store owner to secure the video footage, and they interviewed the lady who had called them. At the hospital, I was taken to ICU and hooked up to machines that would monitor my vitals and alert the nurses' station if a problem developed. My mother and father were told by the attending physician that I was in a coma and that they could stay or go home, and the doctors could call them if anything changed. They both opted to stay. As for me, I may have been physically laying in a hospital bed, but my soul had exited my body entirely. At first, it was scary. I could look down and see myself. But worst of all, I could see my mother crying and had no way to tell her that I was still there. I soon found I was able to pass through walls easily, so I left the room and walked past the nurse's station and into another hallway where I saw my boss, who had arrived by now, talking to my dad about what the doctors had said. As I was going back to the room, I saw an elderly woman. What's more, she saw me. "There you are," she stated. I was caught off guard by this and quickly looked around to be sure she was talking to me. Seeing nobody else in the hallway, I asked, "You can see me?" "Of course I can. Now come on, let's go." "Go where?" I asked. "Just come on," she answered. There was no tunnel and no bright lights. I did not encounter angels or Jesus or even God. Suddenly, we were no longer in the hospital, but instead we had traveled in the blink of an eye to a park. It resembled every other park you have ever seen. There were people walking dogs, people running, kids playing on swings and slides, and then I saw him. The him I saw was my older brother, who had died a few years earlier from a drug overdose. He was sitting at a picnic table with a chessboard ready to go. I guess I should mention that chess was our game. He taught me how to play, and although I never could beat him, we had played every day until he died. "Is that really you, Blake?" I asked. "Who else would I be?" he replied. As I sat down across from him, 1,000 questions rushed my brain at once, but before I could ask any, he simply glanced to the chess set and made his first move. We sat there and played game after game for what seemed like days until I finally won. This was the first time I had ever beaten him in anything, so I jumped up and did me a happy dance. Laughing at me, he said, "Act like you've been here before, little brother." The rush of questions returned, and just as I was about to start asking, Blake looked at me and said, "Tell Mom I am okay and that I'm sorry for the pain I caused her." Those were the last words he uttered to me, because in the next instant I was waking up in the hospital. Nurses, then doctors, came into my room. My mother and father had to be called as they had went home to take showers and return. In all, I had been in my coma for 3 days. My boss came to the hospital to visit me, and I turned in my resignation at the request of my parents. In the 5 years since that night, I have went to culinary school and graduated. Oh, and the guy that robbed the store that night, he was caught, arrested, and convicted, As far as I know, he is still in prison, as it wasn't his first felony.